Victoria Rumble Room. I'm Robin Adair. This is our debut show, and there's two of us. This is just the two of us.
Well,
go ahead, John. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, Robin Adair. My name's John Juricic, and just so proud to be on here with a professional broadcaster. I'm telling you, I'm going to learn so much. I've done a few of these. I'm going to learn a ton from you, and we're going to have so many good topics. We're going to talk about issues, and topics that I think aren't being properly covered through traditional media, and hopefully we're gonna start to touch on those issues, and it'll be, we call it the Victoria Rumble Room because there's no hold bars.
That's right. That's right. And you and I have a long history of doing just that, where we were both on the chamber board together. We're both former chairs of the chamber, and we've been kind of doing stuff at different times, sometimes together, sometimes not. But I think we've done some business together. We did some promotional stuff together, and we even worked on some political stuff together. So we have a long history, John.
Exactly. We sure do. It's almost like, why haven't we done this before? And, no
one would let us, John.
Right. And now the internet. Thank you. But for sure, we have known each other and participated in so many things together. And it's time we brought our voices and our networks together to try to address what are really some serious issues going on out there in our greater Victoria community.
Okay, so I laid out some things when we were first discussing doing this show. I sent you some stuff, and I said, what do you want to do? Do you want to do vaccines, downtown street crime, the return of our beloved tourist industry in Victoria? What do you want to start with, John? What do you think catches your eye this morning?
Well, I think it's important, and I'm just looking at our sort of viewership so far. I can't believe it. We're already at 32,000 people watching us. That's quite amazing.
Billions and billions, right?
Exactly right. And I think it's important for folks to know that we will be a guest-driven show. This is our first one. We want to put a flag in the sand, so to speak, and we'll be talking about some issues. But in the future, bring in guests who can bring some policy strength and background to some of the issues.
You mean people who actually know what they're talking about on these subjects?
Yeah. I don't want to, let everything out of the bag yet. But certainly, an issue near and dear to me. Obviously, I've done a lot of podcasts in 2020 around COVID. I'm not entirely familiar with sort of why we're lagging so badly in terms of vaccinations.
Can I touch on that, John?
Oh, absolutely, Robin. Please do.
Okay.
Start the rumbling.
You know who Mark Carney is? Mark Carney used to be the head of the Bank of Canada.
Yeah.
And then he got moved to Great Britain and became the head of the governor of the Bank of England.
Yes.
And he's just back in Canada again. And he came out this week very critical of the way Canada has handled the pandemic.
Wow.
By saying we were totally ill prepared. We didn't have PPE equipment. In fact, we were giving some of it away to other third world countries before the pandemic hit, and we don't have any capacity to develop our own vaccine. And we've really let the ball drop. And look, we get Justin Trudeau on every week going on about all the hard work we've done and all the things we've signed with all these companies. But we're on a waiting list to get these vaccines. In this instance, it's not the provincial government's fault that we're so far behind.
But I want to blame them.
Penny Dallin, who's got it organized. I think that Bonnie Henry and Adrian Dix have actually done a pretty good job during the pandemic. I think BC's done pretty well in terms of getting information out, and I think people in this province have been pretty respectful of each other and trying to follow the rules. But we've been let down by federal policy here, and we're paying a price where, by July 1st. Independence Day in the States, they're going to fully celebrate because they figure by May, everyone in the United States will have had 2 vaccines, the whole country, 350 million people. Yeah. And they're saying we should celebrate because by the end of September, everybody in the country will have had 1 vaccine.
Yeah, and that's if the U.S. releases some of their vaccine supply. So if they don't, it could be December I just heard this on the radio the other day. I'm startled. I thought we were a member of the G7, implying that we're one of the 7 most prolific,
biggest
highly
economy.
organized economies in the world.
Sure.
And now
We've become over-dependent on other countries. I mean, it's the downside of globalization. And then we have had companies in Canada that have said, we can make the vaccine. We have now done tests. There was a company in Alberta that came out a couple of months ago and said, we've got the vaccine. We've done tests. We've done 2 rounds. We can get our 3rd round done. All we need now is federal support. And the federal government came back with $3 million to help them. $3 million. And then they dumped, I think, $300 million into some organization in the province of Quebec. So there's a lot of politics behind that. But we're still miles behind, John.
So, Robin, for the folks that know me and the odd 2 or 3 or 4 people have seen my podcast in the past,
Yes.
I do try to, as much as I will alert or complain or be concerned about issues, I try to also provide what can we do in response to that. And therefore, on this one, what do you think? Like what can a normal person do to make some noise about our really bad vaccine implementation program?
At this point, John, I think we're stuck. I think we got to remember this when it comes to election day. And I know that Justin Trudeau wants to drop the writ. He doesn't like running a minority government. I'm not saying he should be thrown out of office on this one issue, but I'm saying people should be aware of this. They shouldn't be taking, oh, what a fantastic job we've done. They should be saying, well, it wasn't really that well handled. And then they have to measure it that way. And the other thing I'd say is we personally, you and I and all the British Columbians we know, we've got to be responsible. I mean, they said, okay, everybody who's over 90 is going to be in the first rung of people to get vaccines. Here's the number to call if you're over 90. And 1.7 million British Columbians vote, and they crashed the system. Well, I don't think was there 100,000 people in the whole province that are over 90? I don't think it was that many. I mean, it's a small group. And what were people thinking? People are overreacting. I know we all want the vaccine. I want the vaccine. But if we jam up the system and don't listen to how the thing is going to be laid out, we're going to be fighting uphill through the whole process.
Well, I think we should promise our guests in future, we'll have some experts on this issue that can talk to it, because we should try to dig a little deeper. And that's what we're doing the show for, to get a little deeper into some of these issues, just not sort of surface reactions, which is what now media has become. And I would like to know, I recall the Trudeau government mentioning last summer that they had secured through effective procurement 20 million doses of this and 10 million doses of that. And I thought, hey, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is amazing. We're going to be vaccinated before you can spell the word. Well, what happened? Where's the breakdown? Literally, between those announcements and what we have right now. And I'd love to examine that.
It's politics, John. It's all politics and it's spin. And I'm not saying the federal government isn't sincerely trying to get us vaccines. And heck, we went to India to get vaccines. That's one of the ways we've been able to help recoup some of our shortfalls. But, they're making massive numbers of vaccines in places like Michigan, and they won't send it north to Ontario. I mean, the United States is going to have all of its vaccines in place. And I don't know, are we in a position where we're going to be able to benefit at the end of May, and suddenly they'll turn towards us and say, here, Canada, here's a bunch of vaccines. Right. I don't know. I don't know how that works, John. I mean, my international nose doesn't necessarily smell something good here. It feels bad.
Well, I can't wait to talk more about it on our show. Now, the direct consequence and domino of lack of vaccine implementation is our inability to really get our economy going again. And I would just love to talk to you, because both you and I have been directly involved with the development of economic development agencies in Lower Vancouver Island from, the mid-2000s, feels like, when I was 22 years old. and and and
Well, that'd have been the 1800s, eh, John? That was a long time. A lot of things have happened.
that's right.
How was the First World War for you? No, anyway, that's it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, that's that. Look, already cruise ships can't come to Victoria till next year.
Right.
What a significant blow to our regional economy. A good argument can be made that the West Shore, they are building their own, literally, region. The West Shore, I think, to me, is the new Surrey. They're working almost independently of downtown Victoria. You've got the peninsula with its assortment of hidden manufacturing sector, retail, marine industry, airport ferries. Those are all generally speaking, rocking and rolling.
But John, you've told me this before when we've chatted, that the IT industry, which is a growth industry in our region, has actually done very well through the pandemic and is going to come really strongly out of this. And I think that there are certain sectors that we can be sure are going to do well. I mean, look at real estate. It's doing really well. Our friends in real estate are just as happy as can be.
Man, are they ever? You're right.
Along.
Yeah.
And I was talking to some friends that are money managers and brokers, and they tell me that the scuttle they're hearing, and there's no clear evidence of this yet, but there's so much money in the economy now, trillions of dollars in the States, billions of dollars invested in Canada. It's deficit spending, but it's huge amounts of money. There is going to be a massive boom. People are talking about this becoming the roaring 20s, but I would also put a caveat: tourism is going to be behind. And Victoria is a tourism town in its very heart. And I think I was reading this last week that Randy Wright from Harbour Air was saying it's going to be a tough summer. And they're down, I think, to 20% flights. Man. They're very, very concerned. We're not going to get people coming in by plane. We're not going to get people coming in by boat. And the American customer, they're going to all have their vaccine. But are they going to come to Canada if they know people here haven't?
No.
I don't. Why would they?
Yeah, and will the borders even be open for them? I mean, right. And so yeah. So I'm so for those folks that want to know who I am besides being handsome and very young, and intelligent. Oh yeah, okay, I say that all the time. Yeah. I actually am a labor market consultant. I've been doing that for 100 years, and that's interestingly enough where you and I intersected a few times in business. And one thing to know about our local economy is that there are many, many sectors. So whereas it might appear downtown is tourism sector driven, it is.
And government sector.
And government sector driven, and retail sector, hospitality, it is. The preponderance of economy downtown is those sectors. But as you correctly indicated, real estate, construction, advanced manufacturing, technology, different sectors are thriving. And so is there political leadership, strong enough leadership in Victoria to warrant shifting so that we're not so reliant? I very much hope that the tourism industry rebounds. A
lot of people in the tourist industry, to your point, have already left those jobs because they had to, because they closed or reduced services. So a lot of those people have moved on. And to your point also, the manufacturing sector, it never closed down. I give our government provincially big thumbs up on that. I mean, in Ontario and Quebec, they shut it all down. It was all closed. Nobody was building anything. In BC, hard hat industries have stayed open, and it's kept a lot of people employed.
Totally. For the folks that I'm liaisoning with on the peninsula, they've needed at any given point 30, 40, 50 people to keep up with the business because they're selling so much and adopting to an online environment. Does Victoria Council, which is now in there for another year and a half, have the vision, I hope so, with a new councillor there, Stephen Andrew, to address this economic crisis in downtown Victoria? Are they?
Why do they put out so much energy in contentious issues that don't need to be dealt with right now. It's not for the economic betterment of Victoria to be fussing around about Clover Point or blocking off traffic on Richardson because, you know, they want to put more bike lanes in.
This really astounds me, Robin, because I helped Mayor Lisa Helps with fundraising now 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago. And if you remember the context of that time, the environment, Mayor Dean Fortin had then been either mayor twice, maybe even only once. And our economy was not good.
Right.
And there wasn't COVID. It was just poorly managed.
Well, we'd had all the struggles with the bridge, the replacement of the Johnson Street Bridge, which I think is really probably what cost Dean Fortin his job as mayor.
Yeah. And Lisa came in, according to my humble opinion, on an economic development platform. That was part of it. What clearly has happened since then is, in fact, came in on a social development platform. And I don't entirely know whether the Victoria community and voters want that. I don't know. We'll see. I think the early indications are that they don't. Stephen Andrew beat a highly organized candidate.
Yes.
with a significant backing. And so I think the fact that something around Clover Point has to be an issue over jobs, over.
Well, and John, I mean, you've dealt a lot in terms of work between municipalities, work between developers, work between visionaries, if you like. What's all this lack of consultation? You know, what's all this? We're going to build this thing. Here's city planners presenting. Okay, here's our plan. This is what it is. And then the public goes crazy. Suddenly, there's 500 letters going to City Hall. The Times columnist, it was for weeks. It was these letter after letter after letter. People furious about this, and you think, well, why didn't they consult? And the same with some of these bicycle lanes. The bicycle lane on Vancouver Street, the bicycle lanes they're designing. I'm not against bicycles. I think we need bicycles, but we still are a car economy. In 10 years' time, John, if we're still driving,
we're still alive.
You know, maybe we'll be driven somewhere. But anyway, everybody will be in hybrid and electric cars, and we're moving towards a non-fossil fuel energy sector in that regard. Anyway, it's going to happen. It's not there yet because the infrastructure is not, but people will be driving in cars that are very low, if not zero emission. And the idea that we're all going to ride bicycles and be like Holland is a happy little myth that certain segments of the society really like, but it's not realistic.
Well, years and years ago, back after the First World War, I was lucky enough to present to universities and university grad students about reflections on my business experience. And a general question would be, well, John, what's the trick? You know, what there's got to be a magic key. Come on, there's got to be. Now, these are folks understand that have been studying for years. They've been studying this and formulas. And I go, yeah, there is communication. Learn how to talk. Learn how to speak. Learn how to articulate your views. And they'd all sit there and go, what? I'm not learning that. I go, well, you better. And, you know, I continue to say that over all of these years because it is the direct answer to your quandary that you've posed. I don't think our council in general knows how to effectively communicate, and therefore don't. When you don't, you're scared of it. But what harm would it be to have folks in front, the politicians and folk in front of a room of people and listen to them and then debate with them?
Well, and I think the lines have become so blurred about we're getting poorly governed at all three levels. And in some respects, they're all trying to govern for each other. Like the municipalities are trying to take on federal responsibilities in terms of pronouncements on national policies, and the overlap is becoming quite confusing. And I know the province gets very frustrated. Like let's take an example of the street camping issue and the parks camping and all of that. I mean, the provincial government and the federal government have a huge role to play in cleaning this up. I mean, there's a lot of people that are out on our streets that really need a lot of help. That's going to cost a lot more money than just buying some hotel and putting them in rooms, because some of those people aren't going to stay in those rooms, John, because they're sick, or they're really, really addicted to drugs, or they've got a lot of other problems, anger management issues, you name it. They need a lot more help. We've closed down all the institutions that used to do that. And I'm not saying bring that back, but we've got to bring back something, because what we're doing now clearly doesn't work. But the municipality can't pay for the solution.
Right.
We're paying taxes. We're just paying taxes for our roads and our sewage and for our lights. And municipalities can't tax you extra beyond your property tax.
Right.
And yet they're trying to do things that the federal government and provincial government are responsible for. Yeah. And it's ill-serving the public.
Well, therefore, if a politician were to open their eyes and their modus operandi and listen to folks, I don't think that what you're saying is an isolated viewpoint. There would be many who say that, because that's the way it is. Likely 90 to 95% of the folks that are homeless and living in parks require significant medical attention. That is a completely different issue than housing. And it's a completely different issue than income. And why are we talking about that?
Homelessness is not the issue here. Mm-hmm. I mean, I grant you, there are people on the lower edges of our society who are struggling. And look at the expense of real estate and homes to live in a place like Victoria. It's a big problem. But that's a separate issue from what's going on in these parks. Yes. And at the same time that we're saying, no, we want to protect these people and we want to help them. And it's you know, and I'm not saying we shouldn't help them, but we can't help them if we just keep them in a campsite in a tent. That's not helping them. Yeah. That's no help to anybody. And at the same time, we're reducing support for our police. I see the police unions come out and said, you know, we've got to get behind the police more. It's dangerous for them. And they're understaffed, and we've got a big problem, and it's growing all the time. And yet, for some reason, our priorities are skewed.
You and I, during our chamber years, which were a few years ago now, gosh, I'm going to have to stop saying that because people are going to think that I'm actually old. And now they can see me, because we're going to be actually publishing video.
That's right.
But, you know, our chamber meetings would start at 7 a.m, and we would, because people had to start work later on. And I would walk and it would downtown, just Upper Yates there. And we would walk along wherever I parked my vehicle. And there were folks sleeping in business alcoves right in front of businesses. And there would be police waking them up. And you know, that was now a few years ago. And this notion that that's what police are supposed to do is wrong. But the simplistic solution that they just stop funding it is absolutely wrong. They need more funding towards handling crime and the consequences of these social issues not being solved. But yeah, I remember police would wake them up. Well, where do they learn that?
Well, and we're vilifying police. I mean, Black Lives Matter is a real issue. I'm not saying there isn't unwarranted police violence, but the Victoria Police, they're members of our community. I mean, we all know people. They're in the Victoria Police. A lot of them are former athletes that have been on our sports teams. They're so integrated to the community. Yeah. We've known police people for years that have been so incredibly involved at so many levels. And to sort of castigate them as being a negative influence or somehow a bad thing in the city, I think is such a disservice to people who have worked so hard to make us safe for all this time.
You and I, you know what we're going to do? We should have members of the local police force.
Well, I'm sure you know lots of them, John.
Well, I know because I'm still on their, you know, rapid phone list.
Well, I was thinking how they're banging on your door all the time, but no, I'm just kidding.
Well, you never know. They're going to get to know me a little better now through you.
That's right.
But wouldn't that be great to really start to personalize what a day in the life of a police person is? Because all we're hearing now are these sort of political points, and not really allowing to see the people behind these extraordinarily difficult things they're involved with.
Do you remember when Courtney Walls was murdered downtown? It was quite a while ago. He was a rugby player, and he was murdered back in the 1990s. And it was so random. It was right down near City Hall, and somebody started threatening.
In front of Subway down there?
So in front of the Subway.
Yes, I do.
He was stabbed to death.
Yes.
And it was such a shock to the community. And people were kind of like, oh my goodness, how did this happen? And this was just on the eve, I think, of this shift that we've had towards huge numbers of people on our streets and sidewalks, on the Pandora Boulevard, and moving through our parks and moving through our community, and how, we've become a destination for people from across the country to come because there's lots of services, get food, it's a mild climate. And I'm not saying that these people shouldn't be helped. We should be helping these people, but we can't just help them by making it more comfortable for them to be doing what they're doing right now. We have to improve the conditions for them, which improve the conditions for all of us.
Yeah, and I think that's a fabulous way that we might consider ending our first Victoria Rumble vodcast. So we're a video podcast are now called vodcasts, and I think that we're going to have quite a bit of interest because I'd like to dig deeper into these issues, personalize it, humanize it. And that's something we're not able to get through traditional media. And of course, for folk, for me to learn from a professional speaker, professional broadcaster, Robin Adair, it's such an honor. Yeah, I'm talking to you, not your little dog in the back.
Can you see my little dog? Is it?
I think I did earlier, maybe before. Yeah. He'll become a personality now.
I think he was frightened when he saw you on screen.
So right. Yeah. I don't want to be near that guy, especially if he's on the police rapid phone list. So, Robin, I think we're going to have a ton of fun. I think we're actually going to help the community understand some of these issues, maybe a bit better than they can now. Deal with some tough things and communicate. And
how do we get the word out on this show, John? How can people see this and let their friends see it? And how do we get this out?
So we're gonna publish this on our YouTube site, which is really the only place that we can, a video of this size. And then we're going to share it amongst our social media networks. And I think that'll generate some interest. And if you and I both do that, we're early adopters to social media. So we have good networks. We have good networks of people, of community, of politicians. And in time, hopefully this will be a go-to place to listen to issues in depth. We don't have all the answers, but if we can help people understand the issues better, maybe some answers will come of that.
Well, this has been a really great Victoria Rumble Room debut. And John, love being with you, and I'll look forward to our next show.
You bet, Robin. Have a great day.